So what I run into a lot is the situation where the man, in this case, we'll use the ASD man and the NT wife as the example, he is literally afraid of his NT wife at this point when the conflict has gone on for years unresolved. And this usually starts out by she, the NT wife, has not experienced the degree of emotional reciprocity that she wants and needs and desires. A lot of her expectations are not being met. This goes on for quite a few years. With good intention, she tries to reconcile differences, trying to make the relationship work, trying to fix some broken pieces, and her good faith effort usually downloads in his mind, the ASD man, as complaining, criticism, being parental, constantly correcting him. And so now he feels like he's on thin ice all the time, like he's in the doghouse much of the week. And I have heard so many self-reports from these men that they honestly are afraid to say much or do much because they just assume that they're going to get in trouble. And so they tend to basically go into shy mode. And this could look like he's spending less time with you. He doesn't really want to engage conversation with you. He may view you as his major source of anxiety. He tends to be preoccupied with other things. And that downloads into the NT wife's mind as he doesn't care about the relationship. I'm not important to him, and so on. But in many cases, what's really going on, he is just trying to avoid drama and conflict and arguments. He doesn't feel like he can win. And at some level, he's given up hope because he's, in his mind anyway, he has tried numerous things, none of which seem to help anything. And these men will say this a lot. It doesn't matter what I say or do, it's never good enough. And they are literally afraid, and I'm not exaggerating, they are constantly overly concerned, for good reason in their mind, that it's better to say nothing at this point, because when I try to fix it, oftentimes it makes a bad problem worse. And they're basically in a form of flight. And you may notice as an NT wife that sometimes he flips to the other side of that spectrum and goes into fight, which would be the meltdown, adult temper tantrum, and so on, and then flips back to the shutdown. So the moral to the story then is we need to come up with a communication strategy such that the NT wife can get her point across. In this case, the point being I need to get some of my needs met, without that downloading in his brain as I'm being attacked yet again. And so I really need to protect myself, and how I protect myself is to disconnect. So I have an exercise for both the NT spouse and the ASD spouse. And this assignment, and it would be good if you could journal or write a paragraph or two about this, would be to look at what's going on underneath the arguments. So we argue with one another because we are angry with what's going on. We feel that there's some unfairness, that some things are just not right. We want to fix it. And so we get angry. Both the NT and the ASD individual get angry. So that's what's underneath the argument, is anger. But what's underneath the anger is fear. And that's what I would like for you to look at and journal. So the question then becomes, when you argue with your spouse, what is the fear that's motivating that argument? Is it fear of not getting your needs met? Fear of loss? Fear of being chastised, ridiculed, criticized, put down, disrespected, and so on? So we don't argue for no good reason. You spend a lot of time and energy arguing. In fact, if you've had a knockdown, drag-out argument that has lasted for an hour or more, you may have realized that you're exhausted, because it does burn up a lot of energy. And so if you could look at the fear that's motivating these arguments, that's motivating the anger, then the next step then would be, okay, what can I do to address the fear? Because my arguing isn't addressing my fear one bit. It's actually increasing my anger because we never get anything resolved, which in turn is increasing my fear, which means the next time we argue about the same damn thing, it's even going to be more intense than the previous time. So that's the assignment, guys and ladies. I want you to begin the process of debriefing or going back and investigating your arguments in retrospect after they have already happened. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this as a couple. It would be probably better to do it individually. And go back and replay that argument that happened earlier today or yesterday or last week, and do a little investigation. Examine, why was I so invested in defending myself or arguing or pouring out all of these angry words that I threw at the other person? What was the fear motivating that? So the next part of the assignment would be then, when you have your list of fears, go back and look at, what can I do to get these fears addressed? We'll use the example that may be consistent with what some NT wives experience. We'll go with the fear of not getting my emotional needs met. So the next time you would have the propensity to argue and fight and get angry, Instead, maybe you could actually have a conversation rather than an argument about how I can get my emotional needs met. So you'd want to brainstorm some ideas about that, and then you could present that in a calm manner to your spouse. Let's use an example for the man who has autism spectrum disorder, and maybe one of his fears is being criticized. So now you would need to brainstorm some ways that you could converse with your NT wife such that her words didn't download as criticism in your brain. So the hope then is that you could actually have a conversation rather than an argument and give your NT wife some ideas on how she can express herself such that you don't view that as put down criticism, her being parental, exaggeratory, and so on. So this is not a magic bullet, but it's certainly the beginning of looking at the core issue, which is your fears. If you want more details on how to do this and go deeper into this exercise, then by all means, email me, and we can elaborate and broaden this exercise in a more thorough manner and do a deeper investigation into what's going on underneath the anger. So one thing that often comes up when I'm working with neurotypical women in a relationship with a man on the autism spectrum, or vice versa, is she will say, I try to talk to him and he doesn't get it. I keep going over the same thing again and again and again. He doesn't get it. I keep trying to tell him what the problem is and what he can do to help alleviate the problem. He still doesn't get it. And so with this business of problem solving, what you're running into, if you're not getting the problem resolved, is you guys aren't agreeing on what the problem is. I run into this every time, as in 100%. She will go, when she's talking to him, well, the problem is this. And he'll go, no, that's not the problem. The real problem is that. And she will go, what? Are we on the same planet? No. This is the problem. I'm telling you, that's the problem. And he goes, no, that is not the problem. You're wrong. This is the problem. So you see where this gets nowhere, because the two of you can't even agree on what the freaking problem is to begin with. So the first step in problem solving, which doesn't even get to the desired result, because you have to first establish some kind of a bond or some kind of a trust that we are going to just worry about identifying the problem. Let's don't worry about solving it just yet. Let's just see if we can identify it. So that would be the first step. Now, I understand in some cases the two of you are just going to disagree what the problem is, and that's fine, as long as you agree that you're going to disagree on what the problem is, but we still have found the problem. It's just now the problem is 1A and 1B. So it's still, in a sense, just one problem. It's just a two-pronged problem. So anyway, this is the deal that I run into is you guys are first going to have to somewhat agree on what the problem is, and then move from there. But if you say the problem is A, and he goes, no, the problem is B, and you try to compromise, negotiate, have a meeting of the minds based on two versions of the problem, most often that's going to be a fail, because he's going to want to resolve problem B while you're trying to resolve problem A, and since the two of you aren't working together, the rest is history. The problem doesn't get solved. And today I wanted to talk to some of the NT partners, especially neurotypical wives, as to why your attempt at damage control often fails. And what I mean by damage control is the relationship is not firing on all 8 cylinders. In fact, it may be down to just 2 or 3 cylinders, and it's sputtering all over the place, and it has been on the decline for several months, if not years. And so you've made your best effort to try to get your high-functioning autistic spouse or partner on the same page with you and understand, hey, we're in trouble here. This relationship is drowning. Can we be a team and work with me as a team player, and let's see if we can fix this thing? And so that's your attempt at damage control, and that's the term I'm using here. So when we're in some form of distress, either psychologically or physically, we tend to want to reach out for assistance, and we may do that by asking for help, telling people we need help, complaining if we're not being heard by those who can help. We may yell, we may get angry if we have to, so we would start off basically asking for assistance. And then when repeated requests for assistance go unanswered, then we can escalate to getting aggressive, because we're really in need of some assistance at this point. So when we're in some state of need, and we can't fulfill that need by ourselves, and we really need the assistance from somebody else, we often assume that A, the people that we reach out to, or the person that we're reaching out to, will listen. B, They will understand what we're going through and have some empathy and compassion, and C, they will do their best to help if they love us and care about us, right? So, for example, as a child, when you had a safety need and that need was going unmet for whatever reason, and you made it known that this need was going unmet, your parents most often would jump in and take care of that need. They'd make sure that you had plenty of liquids, plenty of food, shelter. They taught you about safety measures to take when you crossed the street, and so on. They protected you. They did their best in most cases to meet your needs. So if we had decent parenting growing up, we just assume now as adults that those who love and care for us will be interested in meeting our needs, especially when we're in some state of psychological or physiological distress. We just assume that our significant other, our partner or spouse, who supposedly loves and cares for us, will be very interested in meeting our needs, similar to how our parents did. But when we have a certain set of needs, and let's use the example of when we need some emotional reciprocity, we need some quality time from our partner, we need some validation and so on, and we don't get these basic emotional needs met, we will tend to cry out for help in a way, and that kind of looks like a lot of complaining, anger, even months and years of having the need unmet. It can turn into resentment and bitterness. Now, if we're in a relationship with someone on the autism spectrum who has mind blindness issues, alexithymia issues, then we are in a situation where we're with somebody who is not going to reciprocate as much as we need. So when we're in a relationship and we're not getting our emotional needs met, we're not getting emotional reciprocity or validation, we're not getting our feelings listened to, we feel like we're misunderstood, we feel like we're not as important to the other person as his or her work or special interest, then we do want to make it known that, hey, I'm really suffering here, please help me out, please meet these needs, this is how it's supposed to be, normal people meet one another's needs in this way, why can't this happen in this relationship? So the NT wife complains vehemently that her needs are going unmet, and she tries desperately to have a connection, and the more she does this, the more she pushes him away, him being the high-functioning autistic husband, because now he's retreating as a form of anxiety reduction. He's retreating into his special interest, into his work, into his man cave, any place to get away from what is now his main source of anxiety. Think of this example here. Let's say you're a child and both of your parents are on the autism spectrum, and you fall and scrape your knee really bad and it's bleeding and you're crying and you're hysterical, and your parents go, hey, you need to calm down because all that screaming and crying is really raising my stress and I'm not going to be able to help you until you calm down. And so they leave. They go to the other end of the house and they leave you over there bleeding to figure it out for yourself because your approach is stressing them out and they can't help you when they're stressed out, so they retreat. Of course, that scenario is ridiculous, right? Similarly, as the NT wife tries to cry out to her high-functioning autistic husband and say, look, I'm suffering over here. I'm having some mental health issues. I'm having some physical health issues. My emotional needs are not being met. I feel like I'm shriveling up like a flower that's not getting water. Can you please connect with me and give me some emotional reciprocity, some empathy, some validation? Just listen to my feelings. Listen to my thoughts as I describe them. Try to understand what I'm going through. And all of these pleas for help end up pushing him further away, which now makes the NT wife think, I am never going to get my needs met here. I am totally lost as to what to do, and my best efforts to reconnect fail. Now back to the childhood example again, where you've fallen and scraped your knee. You would never have the thought, okay, well, my parents just said I'm crying too loudly and they've left. They don't want to help me because I'm being too noisy. So I'll stop crying, I'll wipe my tears away, I'll bandage up my knee on my own, and then I can reconnect with my parents. They'll be okay with me then. Of course you wouldn't do that. Similarly, as an NT wife in a relationship with an autistic husband, you wouldn't go, well, it's been 2 or 3 years since I've had my emotional needs met, and so I think what I'm going to do is just meet my own emotional needs. I'll just have to make sure that I validate myself and listen to myself and understand myself and take care of myself. You wouldn't do that, right? It would be ridiculous because as a 5-year-old child, you can't parent yourself. And as a 35-year-old adult, you can't be in a marriage with yourself. So this brings us to the point of what can be done. And what has to be done is the approach that you are using to reach out for help in this case with your significant other who is on the autism spectrum, the way that you're trying to establish a reconnection, the way you're trying to get validation, someone to listen to you, someone to understand you, someone to spend quality time with you, somebody to make you feel important, the approach that you're using has to yield the opposite effect of pushing that person away. What would be the opposite effect? That would be pulling them in. How do you pull them in? The answer is to come up with a communication strategy that does not raise the anxiety of your autistic partner. Because as soon as his anxiety has launched, all efforts to receive a quality connection, empathy, validation, understanding, cooperation will be lost. Because now the autistic husband, in this case, will be more concerned about self-preservation. How do you find this communication strategy? It's going to be important for you to find a marriage and family therapist or a counselor, psychiatrist, whomever, who has some expertise in autism spectrum disorders and will know how to come up with a strategy that can keep the autistic person's anxiety low while at the same time getting the neurotypical's emotional needs met. Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendar link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.